Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon if you're in Asia. Welcome to a webinar on how does Taiwan tackle climate change despite exclusion from the UNFCCC. And we have two absolutely amazing speakers. Dr. Xiu from the Research Center for Environmental Change at Academia Sinica, and Dr. Susha Ferenczi, who is from Vrije University in Brussels, as well as the Institute for Security and Development Policy. This, of course, is going to be an absolutely fantastic event, but I would like to invite Dr. Clement Gu, the representative for the Taipei mission here in Stockholm, to give a bit of context before we start. Clement, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Morning, Nicholas. Morning, Susan. Morning, Professor Xi. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor, pleasure to attend this wonderful event. All of us, we know that today our most difficulties events or issues for our international participation actually from PRC side. And in the year of 1971, UN passed the resolution 2758, and PRC disputed this so-called resolution, actually just only because this resolution, PRC took the seats, China seats in the UN. However, this resolution doesn't mention at all Taiwan and doesn't authorize the so-called PRC to represent Taiwan. So in this regard, this year in October time, European Parliament voted resolution, and this resolution actually be passed by 432 member parliament in favor of so-called Taiwan's international participation. This 432 member account for almost 60% of member of European Parliament. And this resolution, the 4 points I would like to share with you. Number one, European Parliament strongly rejected the so-called PRC distorted history and international rules. The second one is 2758 UN resolution doesn't mention Taiwan at all. The third point is European Parliament oppose PRC distorted or blockade Taiwan's international participation. Last but not least is co-on European Parliament, co-on EU, and all the EU member states support Taiwan's meaningful participation in international organizations. For example, UNFCCC. And when we back to the Swedish government, Swedish new Minister of Foreign Affairs, she mentioned once in answer the question of the parliamentarian in the parliament, she mentioned Swedish government support Taiwan's meaningful participation in the UNFCCC, and the cooperation between Taiwan and Sweden very broad and long term. So in this regard, actually not just only in EU, but also Swedish, and I do believe many European Union, member of European Union, they support these issues. So actually Taiwan has already passed the so-called Climate Change Reaction Act. And in this year, associated 3 measures also promulgated. Of course, the condition into the so-called as an observer in the UNFCCC very relative loose. According to the article in the agreement of the UNFCCC Paris Agreement, they mention very clear anybody, agency, governmental, non-governmental, national, international, if you want to be as an observer in the UNFCCC, just show your wish, and you can be show your wish in the Secretariat of the UNFCCC, and let's finish. So actually, in terms of legal, very easy way. However, we know that there is always a political shadow and political barrier from the other side. We do hope, like many countries, we can do one thing: solidarity. Taiwan, we would like share, we can help. I said that always. We have very good export, wonderful import, beautiful, beautiful seaport, amazing, amazing airport. We have even our own passport. But what we still need is your support. I stop here. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Always enlightening. And I think this will be, I mean, the number of questions we're trying to answer with this, but the main question, of course, is what will happen with Taiwan being excluded from these international bodies, and what can Taiwan do for its commercial activities, for its national activities, and more importantly, equally important, what do we lose by excluding Taiwan? Taiwan, of course, is a partner for the world. It's extremely technologically advanced, and I think it's going to be very interesting to listen in to the speakers here. And I would like to start with Professor Hsu. If you would like to take the floor and enlighten us a bit on your perspectives on this challenge. Professor, the floor is yours.
Okay, let me launch my PowerPoint. Did you see my PowerPoint here?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Okay. So thank you for invitation. It's my pleasure to share my 2 cents with you on this very challenging issue. How does Taiwan tackle climate change despite exclusion from the UNFCCC? Okay, I'm from the Academia Sinica, Taipei. Okay, so in Taiwan, our government, the former President Tsai, actually announced Taiwan's net zero transition and by 2050 in 2021. So we have 12 key strategies, starting from the wind and solar power and the hydrogen, and also the advanced or innovative energy, and all the way to CCUS and carbon-free electric vehicles, and also green lifestyle, green finance, and everything, and also include the just transition. So one key number I would like to share with you is our goal for the electricity share by 2050 will be 70% from the renewable energy, probably mainly from the hydrogen and the wind, from the solar power and the wind power, and 10% from the hydrogen, and about 20% from fossil fuel with CCUS. And also I'd like to remind you that Taiwan has become a nuclear-free homeland in 2016. So currently we do not really consider too much about the usage of the nuclear power. All nuclear power will be phased out next year when the last reactor shut down. Okay, so what's our current status of our pathway toward the net zero? So one big challenge is to create as much as green energy or renewable energy in the short terms. And that would be the first target or task would be to increase our solar or wind energy implementations. But we are kind of lagging behind of this original goal. For example, for the up-coast wind farm, the original goal is to produce like 5.6 gigawatt by 2025, but until June, July this year, we only been able to produce 2.5 gigawatt due to many reasons. Okay, COVID and price increase, and even wars between the Ukraine and the Soviet, many issues. And also for the solar electricity, we are lagging behind a little bit. So for the short-term challenge, it will be to close the solar and the wind energy implementation as soon as possible. And another bigger challenge in the future is how to scale and speed up in all aspects of energy production, including hydrogen and the ocean current electricity, geothermal and CCSU, etc. Okay, but we have been trying very hard in the past few years, despite we are being excluded from the UNFCCC. For example, our new president, President Liang, actually launched the National Climate Change Committee, NCCC, June this year. So 2 meetings already held until now. So try to speed up and scale up the implementation of the green energy. Okay, so but we all understand that extra effort is needed to elevate our ambitions. Okay, if we pay attention to this figure, is our net zero path until 2050. So the original goal is to reduce the carbon emission by only about 20% by 2030. But that seems to not ambitious enough. So now there's a talking or discussion inside the NCCC, try to speed up the emission reduction. For example, one possible goal could be like a 40% reduction by 2032. That is really a big challenge. Actually, we will be facing a lot of pressure to achieve that. Okay, and another challenge is that we are the major producer of this AI-related manufacturing. Okay, so also many data centers would like to move to Taiwan for operation. So to provide this industry with enough electricity and water, that is a big challenge too. For example, we have been facing the challenge from the climate change. Our projections show that the temperature, like everywhere on Earth, that the temperature is rising, and the heat waves also increase and become enhanced. And the summer is going to become much longer, and the winter become much shorter. When our projection is based on this very high emission scenario, Taiwan will no winters by 2060s. Okay, and so that will be indicating the higher demand of electricity in the near and the long futures. And also the wet season is going to get wetter, dry season will get drier. So that means a higher water stress in the future. Okay. For example, in the 2020 to 2022, we have this mega drought. So we face this a big challenge. And fortunately, we passed the ordeal and make little harm to our industry and our life. Okay, and also the even bigger challenge is energy and economic challenge. For example, as I say that we are pursuing for net zero, but at the same time we need to our electricity demand is increasing and will be increasing in the future. So in order to match the both goal, meeting the net zero and also meeting the electricity demand, we need to have an economic scale and implementation speed of the green energies. Okay, and both the warming is increasing and the demand is increasing, and so a big question is when and how we're going to achieve that. Okay, that's still a huge challenge for us. And also the the contradiction between the economic development. We are basically based on international trade. That's very important, and also versus the net zero transition path. Okay, and so one possible people are thinking is the so-called global carbon market will provide the carbon credits just as in the COP29. Can that be helpful? Okay, we can offset some of our carbon emission, but at the same time we have to pay money for buying this electricity. So so there has been a discussion of economic, the type of economic strategies. For example, people are thinking, should we continue pursuing this to maintain an economy heavily relying on AI industry, and while we continue to deliver enough electricity? Or should we change our strategy a little bit? Okay, that's another issue we need. Somebody suggested we should think about, and also the possibility to phase out this industry with high pollution and energy demand, but of low economic value. For example, a steel industry and the chemical industry, and also cement industry like that. Okay, so another issue is the impact of carbon fee. So it just passed recently, and we are collecting carbon fee starting from January next year. So electricity and gas supplier and manufacturing company with annual emission larger than 25,000 metric ton per year, and that they should pay the carbon fee. But now the first carbon fee is like $380 Taiwan dollar, or we can get a discount for like a 50 Taiwan dollar or 100 Taiwan dollar. And this fee will be revised every 2 years. So it will increase to like 1,200 to 1,800 by 2030s. So there's a mixture of response from different groups. For example, NGO suggests that is complaint that's too little. You know, like the too little carbon fee to have significant effect. But on the other side, industrial association complain that it's probably too high for industries to do carbon transition. Okay, so we have to continue the dialogue, facing the for the next 10 years that we are going to increase the carbon fee almost every 2 years. Okay, and despite being excluded from UNFCCC and many international activity, we have been working very hard to understand the climate change impact in Taiwan. For example, this year, in May, we just released a National Scientific Report 2024, the climate change in Taiwan. So it's a timely disclosure of the current standing of climate change trend, impact, and needed adaptation in Taiwan, and sort of provide a very good scientific basis for impact assessment and adaptation planning for our government. But we also identify some existing gaps in our research. For example, we need more powerful computer power for do a calculation, and more support for relevant research. And we need to do a more complete future climate projection, and to do more thorough impact assessment or understanding, so that we can provide enough evidence for the evidence-based adaptation planning. Okay, so for all sectors. So there are many gaps still exist. For example, we do not have enough observational data, and there's a lot of methodology we need to establish, and we have to enhance the cross-sector integration. And also, we need more funding and human power for this kind of research or planning. So now we are pushing for, in Taiwan, to establish a sort of climate adaptation research ecosystem within the governmental agencies to enhance the collaboration, and also between the cooperation between the agency and research community. That's yet to establish. So after this establishment, the more reliable and actionable plan for transformative adaptation can be provided. Okay, and in principle, I guess effort in net zero or so-called mitigation adaptation should be balanced, right? So mitigation will prevent the runaway warming, and adaptation will minimize the risk. But in reality, actually, the effort putting on the mitigation is always much larger than for the adaptation. That's what the COP tried to enhance the balance between the two. But currently, we realize that the gap between the two is even bigger in Taiwan. We put a lot of effort, much more effort in mitigation than adaptation. But there are signs, especially from the UNFCCC, that there will be much resources to improve the research effort in adaptation. Okay, so what's the consequence of Taiwan's being included from UNFCCC? So currently, for example, now it's a COP29 in Azerbaijan. And as we all know, that only Taiwanese who belong to the NGO, they can allow to participate in the activity in the green zone for stakeholders. So we can join the forum, we can form the bilateral discussion or meeting, that sort of thing, but we cannot enter the blue zone, that is the meeting for the party members. So what's the impact on Taiwan? In addition to being cut off from international participation and collaboration, from my personal perspective, is this exclusion from in the past like 20 years, probably a little bit prevent our earlier participation in climate change adaptation and mitigation, because our political leaders are not allowed to participate in UNFCCC COP activities, or are somehow less exposed and feel much better about the emergency and the pressure of climate change issue. And as a result, we may took more time than we should have done to respond to the climate change issues with proper actions. So that's my personal perspective. If we are allowed to participate, then we should be able to take more timely action. Okay, and also because of being excluded from UNFCCC, probably prevented us to share our view on international policy and the action, and also prevent us from contributing our unique experience in these regional climate projections, and also disaster prevention and reduction. We have excellent experience in that, and for combating climate change. So that's one of the big goal for the UN, that's so-called early warning for all. So we can provide a lot of help in this aspect. And also Taiwan, actually I'd like to point out that Taiwan is not just being excluded from UNFCCC. We have been excluded from many international activity related to the UN, for example, WHO, all of you might know, and also World Meteorological Organization, and also activity of the UNEP and World Climate Research Programs, IPCC, etc. And what I personally have experienced is my affiliation is often changed to Taiwan, China, instead of Taiwan or even New Taipei City, China, something like that. I'd like to show you a good example. For example, we actually contribute to the IPCC ARCIC Group 1 report. And in this draft released in August 2021, in the core agenda, it actually suggests to replace Taiwan with Taiwan, China. So that's why in the final version of this IPCC ARCIC report, all Taiwan disappear and replaced with the Taiwan, China. And so we send a letter to the then IPCC chair, Dr. Lee, and to complain about that. Say that's not reasonable, and it would degrade the entire scientific community. Actually, kind of a strong word. And we urge him not to take on this suggested change to our address. And we also send that to the editor to IPCC editorial report. But as you can expect, that without any feedback and no success at all. Okay, so I guess I will share my 2 cents here, and we'll engage in a detailed discussion. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Professor. That was very enlightening. And I'm also looking forward now to Susha to share her 2 cents on this. And I know that, Susha, you have a PowerPoint as well. I should also mention that, please, if you have any questions, you can already now start typing them in the Q&A. So and we'll take them after that. But Susha, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicholas. Thank you, and good afternoon and good morning to all. Good afternoon to those in Asia, where I am myself. So it's very nice to have this event organized today. So I would like to say thank you to you, Nicholas, and also Ambassador Gu, and also the team who put this together, because I think this is an issue that, of course, we all agree that is important, and it's something that we need to discuss. So I think immediately I would, perhaps before I start my presentation, I thought that what Professor Xu, what you mentioned about how the sense of urgency of political leaders in Taiwan impacted by Taiwan's exclusion from the UN mechanism. So I think that's a very interesting point, and I would love to hear more from you. But I think I have about 15 to 20 minutes. So let me just share my screen and start my presentation. I prepared a few slides. And what I would like to do is, of course, we are discussing the implications of Taiwan's diplomatic isolation and also exclusion from the UNFCCC. And I think what I can do and where I feel comfortable in contributing, hopefully, to this debate is to really go a little, zoom out a little bit and see what role Europe plays through its relationship with Taiwan, and also its role that it can perhaps have an impact on how the international community deals with this challenge that Taiwan faces in terms of its status and the implications for climate change mitigation. So these are some of the things I would talk about. So overall, the state of affairs in terms of where we stand in the world in terms of climate change, but also Taiwan's climate change mitigation agenda. I will speak about the threats and the implications when it comes to semiconductors, because as we know, for Taiwan, that is one of Taiwan's assets in terms of its contribution to the international community. And climate change has impact and serious implications for that. I will also speak about the question of resilience in terms of response to climate change threats. The China factor, we cannot talk about the geopolitics of climate change without China in the conversation. So I think that's something I will briefly touch upon. The international cooperation and parliamentary diplomacy as a means to address this. And that's where Europe's role comes into play, because parliamentary diplomacy has been one of the most successful tools that as the European Union as a whole has had and has used, and also Taiwan has used. So I think in this regard, I would like to perhaps also shift the focus and not look so much as what the EU can do, but what we can do actually together. And this is, I think, an important dimension of the debate, because we are dealing with an EU-Taiwan relationship, but also a partnership where there are two sides that can shape and negotiate the partnership. So I think it's another important point in the debate. And I'm using here, I think, Ambassador Gu, you also mentioned the Taiwan can help. Taiwan is helping logo or slogan, perhaps, that the Taiwanese government has used in addressing the pandemic. And that is another issue. And I am perhaps not making a comparison, but also highlighting that climate change is only one issue to discuss when it comes to Taiwan's exclusion, but it's pretty much several issues that are global issues where Taiwan is excluded. And despite that exclusion, Taiwan can help and Taiwan is helping. So how can Europe help in this regard? So the state of affairs in terms of climate change, I came across this 2023 climate change performance index that says that nearly all major economies have wind, solar, or hydropower in their energy mixes. Renewables are booming, but the expansion is too slow to replace oil, coal, and gas and avert worsening impacts of climate change. So in this context, I mean, this is an index that it was put together and included 450 experts, and it evaluated 63 of the world's biggest economies that are responsible for 90% of emissions, including China, the EU, and the US. And the reality is that none of these are doing enough to stop climate change. And also, it found that global emissions must be nearly halved by 2030 in order to avoid an escalation of the climate crisis. So what is the state of affairs in Taiwan? So the reality is that Taiwan has access to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change meetings and mechanisms. And this exclusion from the international response framework weakens Taiwan's ability to formulate adaptation strategies. So this is something that Professor Xu already mentioned. And the argument here is the one that I also subscribe to, that there is an urgent need for Taiwan to be included in early warning systems for disasters, to gain access to real-time information, and to be able to contribute more to global climate change adaptation mechanisms. So some of the points I might skip because Professor Xu just mentioned some of those, but briefly, clearly, increasing frequency of extreme weather events and rising sea levels, they're all endanger Taiwan's environment. Taiwan's average temperature in the past 2 years, it has been the highest in the past 100 years. And there have been heat waves. I've myself based in Taiwan since 2020. So I have experienced some extreme weather conditions. And in fact, just last weekend, I went on a hike, and this hike, or this last weekend, is after the recent typhoon that Taiwan suffered from. And I've seen quite a lot of damage that was very visibly, still is very visible in terms of Taiwan's nature. A lot of very old and big trees are uprooted when this happens. So it's clearly something that Taiwan is facing, especially more frequently because of the extreme weather conditions. And severe flooding also from torrential rains, which may damage infrastructure, property, and also this brings me to the next slide, which is the implications on Taiwan's, one of its strengths, its semiconductor industry. And here I think it's good to mention also that this is one of Taiwan's contributions and strengths, because the other one, I think, it's democratic resilience. So it's often important to kind of connect these two, because I think the fact that Taiwan has established and has invested in these strengths is due to both its semiconductor industry and its democratic resilience. So as we all know, Taiwan is the world's leading chip manufacturer. 60% of the world's chips are made in Taiwan, and over 90% of the most advanced chips are made in Taiwan. It is also a water-intensive industry. The Taiwan Semiconductor Company, TSMC, its southern Taiwan Science Park facilities alone consume up to 99,000 tons of water per day. So there is a big dependence on water, which creates a major vulnerability for Taiwan to be able to maintain and continue to invest in this industry and provide the chips that the world needs, as well as the digital transition needs. So chip foundries, they rely on water for the cooling systems, as well as the cleaning residue from silicon wafers. And this needs ultra pure water, which is in fact cleaner than drinking water. And this has to be free from minerals and pollutants. So this is something that is very important when we discuss the implications of climate change on Taiwan's semiconductor capacity in terms of producing the most advanced chips. In 2021, Taiwan faced its worst drought since '64. And at the time, reservoirs fell below 20% capacity, which caused disruption to chip manufacturers. And of course, we know that this was also the period when we were in the middle of the global health crisis, which increased demand for chips. So this is an example to say that the sense of urgency should be really as high as possible in order to address the challenge. Also, more advanced chips as we go forward will require more complex production processes, which will require more water. So the need will actually keep increasing. Between 2015 and 2019, TSMC's total water consumption surged by 70%, according to my research. And also by 2036, Taiwan's water consumption is projected to be 7.3% higher than in 2021. So a little more information about how TSMC plans to reduce water consumption. So they committed to reduce water consumption by 30% from the 2010 levels by 2030. They launched its own, so TSMC launched its own water recycling plant in the south of the island. But also the Taiwanese government has started to step up efforts to address the problem. So to impose, for example, supply restrictions on agriculture and industry to support the construction of new water recycling desalination plants, as well as to intensify reservoir dredging and reinforce the water pipe network. But as this was said already in the previous presentation, there is more that needs to be done. And some have argued that there needs to be a fundamental shift in how Taiwan addresses the problem as a society, as an economy, and Taiwan's government. So top down, bottom up. And this should include implementing comprehensive integrated measures to prepare for prolonged dry seasons and to combat insufficient water supply. Also to set demand limits based on actual water availability, to diversify water sources, especially in the agriculture sector, and which is responsible for 70% of water consumption. Also to employ stricter water pricing policies to address excessive water usage. Now, there are strategic implications, and I started to talk about these when we talk about Taiwan's role in the global economy, despite its abnormal diplomatic status. So ensuring that the prosperity of Taiwan's semiconductor industry is crucial for Taiwan's economy and also for Taiwan's future. Taiwan has a pivotal role in the global technology supply chain, which gives it strategic leverage on the international stage. So therefore, Taiwan must coordinate new water management strategies throughout the entire island if it wants to protect its silicon shield. Also, climate action required to enhance the international competitiveness of Taiwanese industries is an important point. So now I'd like to step away from the previous discussion and move on to some of the statements that are more, perhaps we can consider these top-down measures, and also statements done at the level of the government. So as you all know, Taiwan had elections this year. In January, a new president was inaugurated in May. And he, in his inauguration speech, said that he's committed to a more resilient Taiwan. And also, as we face the dangers of climate change, he said we must be resolved in our transition to net zero emissions by 2050. Also, Professor Xu spoke about the NCC, the National Climate Change Committee, which had its second meeting in October, where he also spoke of resilient Taiwan. This was established in June 2024 under the Office of the President to address climate governance. I'll go a bit faster here because I think I'm using up most of my time, and I want to leave some time for Q&A. So let me just, President Lai also committed to promoting 5 key strategies for net zero transition, which includes renewables, the twin digital and green transformation. SDGs also are linked to Taiwan's commitment to contribute to SDGs despite its isolation. Now, quickly to the China factor. So we all know, again, that Taiwan lives under an existential threat, under the constant pressure. And for the PRC, Taiwan is a non-negotiable issue. And the rhetoric coming from China has stepped up. And in response to that, the European Parliament and the European Union overall has also intensified its pushback. So I think this is, I would say, a positive development, because this also meant that the European Union is more aware of the pressure that Taiwan faces and the need to include Taiwan. In 2021, the European Parliament passed its first ever resolution on EU-Taiwan political relations, in which it urged member states and the EU to support international initiatives calling for Taiwan's participation in international organizations. It welcomed Taiwan's proactive cooperation about in terms of addressing or fighting against the pandemic, and underlined that this case has proven that Taiwan's contributions in the WHO could be an added value to the health and well-being of citizens. So I'm connecting here other issues beyond climate change that have been high on the EU's agenda when we look at how we can work with Taiwan in addressing the challenges. And Ambassador Gu, you also mentioned the EP resolution on the misinterpretation of the UN resolution 2758, in which the EP also supports Taiwan's participation in international organizations. And it says that this does not undermine the EU's commitment to its one China policy. So this is strong language that, again, I consider to be positive development. I think that parliamentary diplomacy works in terms of sending a message to China that it is important to push back against attempts to further isolate Taiwan, because we recognize the threats that China poses and presents to Taiwan, but also there's bigger implications. I'm mentioning here another framework which was established in 1965, the Asia-Pacific Parliamentary Union. Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, and Thailand, which is a parliamentary framework, which also had its 52nd meeting in Tokyo in March, in which they passed an unanimous agreement supporting Taiwan's participation in UNFCCC, and they announced that Taiwan would host the APPU APPU next year. So going forward, just to wrap up, I mean, this is just a press release about the meeting that took place in Tokyo, which I read as a positive development again, in terms of awareness in the region and beyond of the need to push back against attempts to further isolate Taiwan. I think Europe's rethinking its China policy and its own role and relevance in the Indo-Pacific region has created space for more Taiwan. This is definitely happening. There is a Taiwan narrative that goes beyond advocating for Taiwan's meaningful participation in international organizations, which is, again, a positive development. But clearly, challenges remain, both internally in Taiwan, in terms of addressing and having that sense of urgency that Professor Xu also talked about, that perhaps also suffers as a result of Taiwan's exclusion. But what we need to do, I believe, from Europe's perspective, is to work with Taiwan to look for practical cooperation within existing frameworks, because we are limited in terms of how much we can do, because Taiwan's status is what it is. That's the reality we have to deal with. We are going forward with more intense cooperation with Taiwan without diplomatic recognition, but this should not limit us in how much we do with Taiwan and in pushing back against attempts to manipulate information from Beijing and also to further isolate the space we have for Taiwan. I think we need to be creative, we need to be clear, and we need to be consistent. And I think I am seeing signs of that happening, but I think challenges remain for the future, and perhaps we can discuss more of this in the Q&A, so that I will stop here, and I am happy to take comments, questions, and also hear your points of view on the issue. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. We got 14 minutes left. We have to end sharp, but we have already now 3 questions, and I'm going to start with them, and then I'm going to open up for general comments from the speakers and all that in the end. But I try to ask you to be short, or I ask you to try to be short. We have a question from Brian, Iceland. Terrific presentation, thank you. It was interesting when you remind us of the intended phasing out of nuclear energy in Taiwan in 2025. Considering Taiwan's ambition to become an AI superpower, and noting that other leading AI nations are adopting SMRs, small modular reactors, and even Microsoft is reopening in the 3 Mile Island reactor to meet this dramatic increase of AI energy needs. So how does Taiwan reconcile supporting its AI sector's growth to superpower status while adhering to its non-nuclear policy and current green energy limitations that may well not meet AI demands? And how does this AI ambition fit into the projections on Taiwanese emissions? So I'll leave that. I think that Professor Xu, of course, talked about this, but I think Susha also mentioned this. So Professor Xu, do you want to start?
Yes, this is a good issue, and actually this issue has been debating in Taiwan too. Okay, so but my personal view is first of all, Taiwan is very small, and we don't have any permanent place for the permanent in the storage of the nuclear waste. Okay, so and even we use a SMR or the first generation of nuclear power plant in the near future, and it still has the nuclear waste issues. There's no place to go. Okay, and also this both SMR and the first generation nuclear power plant is basically still in research mode. It's not in a full scale operational yet. So it will not be available probably in the next even 5 or 10 years. So it's not, even it's available, we should probably wait for another 10 years. Okay. So now the nuclear power is not a solution that can solve our the electricity need from the AI industry or semiconductor. And also there's a discussion about the extension of our existing nuclear power plant. Actually, 2 of them already shut down for several years. And the 3rd nuclear power plant, 1 reactor already shut down, and another is going to expire next year. Okay. For the sake of argument, even everything is safe. I mean, the nuclear power is safe, and we don't consider about the nuclear waste. It still takes like for 5 years to recheck all the system and to reactivate them. Okay, but remember, those systems are very old systems. They're older than 40 and 50 years old. Okay, and the safety and reliability of the system is not really known. Okay, so my personal view is even we want to use the nuclear power, it will not be available to Taiwan for the next 10 years. Okay, so it would be better to generate more green energy instead of investing a lot more money try to reactivate the nuclear power plant. Okay, with many risks, especially we are in the earthquake belt, and all the 3 nuclear power plants, when they were approved, they were constructed. Some of the newly revealed earthquake information or geological structure were not known. For example, 40 years ago, many new faults were discovered in the past 10 years. So that's a new information that would set them even more constraint on the activity to reactivate this power plant. So there's many issues. It's not, we don't want to use the nuclear power at all. Probably it can be available, for example, in somewhere in 2050 when the nuclear fusion is available and is safe. But that would be another 20 years or 30 years. So that's my personal perspective. Thank you.
Susha, do you have any comments?
We don't have much time, and I think Professor Xu already gave quite a lot of food for thought there. I mean, I just want to echo the need for Taiwan to invest more energy and more focus on renewables going forward. So perhaps I just stop there so we can take other questions. I see time is running out.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And we have a question from Chiara Marconi. Thank you very much for these insightful presentations. My question is, even though Taiwan can't actively participate in UN member states meetings, is it able to benefit from UNFCCC's programs or projects? If yes, do you have any examples? Thank you in advance. I'll leave that both to Susha or Professor Xu.
I am actually myself not.
Okay, Susha,
I'm happy to take, but I'm not too informed about such specific projects. So, Professor Xu, I don't know if you are.
Professor?
Okay, and I guess it's a good question that how can we benefit from participating in the UNFCCC? Okay, so I guess we can participate in the dialogue, and we can express our own view, yeah. And also, as I said before, that if we can participate in the UNFCCC, for example, 20 years ago, and we can have a more good sense of emergency of climate change. operations. Frankly speaking, we begin this 2050 net zero transition is mainly due to the C-band. So that's the international trade issue. Okay, so we will need to pay for much more carbon tax or carbon fee for exporting goods to the Europe or to many countries. So that's going to hurt our economy and international trade. But if we were able to prepare, for example, like 15 or 20 years ago, we can be better prepared. For example, our process toward renewable energy, we can be more have more technology and more scientific ability to work to enhance our renewable energy implementation faster and in much larger scale. Okay, so that there has been many examples for like wind turbine industry. Recently, we suffered some setback in Taiwan because we asked for the high cell manufacturing rate. Okay, but probably Taiwan is a company may not be already ready to provide so many goods, with acceptable quality, something like that. So there's some mismatch between the local production ability and the need of the foreign turbine company. So that caused a lot of tension between the two, and that delay our wind turbine industry. Yeah, but if we can study that, for example, even 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and the problem would be much easier for us to say.
Fantastic. Final question here. As a short-term solution to Taiwan's exclusion from international climate change frameworks, do you see Taiwan's increasing its green transition efforts on bilateral levels? I know that Danish companies such as Ørsted and Vestas has shared their expertise with the Taiwan government after the introduction of the 2050 net zero emission roadmap. Overall, could Denmark and other Scandinavian countries prove to be an important partner for Taiwan's green transition? And here I would like also to expand it and talk about Europe. And I know Susha has some interesting thing here. And maybe also, Clement, maybe you have some insights here. As the ambassador here in Stockholm, I think that you can have some insights. So, Susha, do you want to start?
Sure. I mean, the question is if Denmark and other Scandinavian countries can be important partners to Taiwan's green transition. I think first of all, I would say they already are. Yeah. Right? Because Denmark and Danish companies that have offices, I think, I'm not sure, maybe you, Professor or Ambassador Gu, you have clear more figures, but I think there are about 40 Danish companies involved in offshore wind that are present in Taiwan, and they have contributed to making offshore wind farms a reality on Taiwan's west coast. So that is already happening. I know that there's been a lot of discussions about how Taiwan has this ambition to become itself a provider in the value chain of offshore wind, and the issue of localization has been an issue for many years, but I think there's been some progress in this regard, which will help European and Danish and Scandinavian companies to actually contribute even more to developing Taiwan's offshore wind industry. So this is a success story, I would say. And I think we are making progress in getting rid of the obstacles. But I know we're running out of time, and I want you also to have time to respond, Ambassador Gu.
Thank you. Of course, this is a good idea for in short terms to do more cooperation bilaterally. However, we have always such political barriers in front of us. So therefore, it is not easy. in short term, this is a good way. And that is also why we said bilateral relationship to strengthen. In terms of climate change, I don't have a real example. However, in the public health, we have already some country, we have some bilateral cooperation. So this is a trend for the future. For example, like Czech Republic, Lithuania, we have already such so-called public health corporations, bilateral MOU, and so on. In the future time, in climate change issues, if we cannot in long terms get such goal achievement, in short terms, we can do use a way for bilateral cooperation. I do believe, and I agree with you, Nicholas, this is a good way for the climate change. How can we do more cooperation in this regard? Especially, actually, EU and EU Parliament have already such consensus since this year's European. I would like to mention the other resolution is also very important. This February, European Parliament passed a resolution mentioning that neither Taiwan nor China is subordinate others, number one. And number two, just only democratically elected government in Taiwan can represent Taiwanese people in the government on the international stage. So therefore, China PRC use always such legal warfare. I mentioned this 2758. I mentioned the other N. This legal warfare actually for many like-minded countries is unfair and unrealistic. I stop here.
Professor Hsu, do you have any final comments, how you would like to see?
Well, certainly I would like to see we can be allowed to participate in all international activity, not just the UNFCCC, COP, and also IPCC, and many, even for the academic people to be treated fairly to participate in international and purely academic research conferences.
Well, thank you very much. I think there are many of us who would agree to that, and to participate for, international good. I mean, this is a human right when it comes to health, security, and I think that there should be no discussion about participating when we're dealing with human security. And I think that this environmental security is very much a human security. But I would like to thank the presenters and, of course, Clement for the participation. This has been absolutely fantastic. I'd also like to thank the Taiwan Center at ISTP, very well organized. Now, I've been enlightened, and I hope that others have been so as well. And please follow us on different social media, and hopefully we will do much more on Taiwan and Taiwan's international positions. So stay tuned, and thank you very much. Have a wonderful week.
Now we have snow.
Now we have snow, exactly.